Sergeant Bill Ogden, United States Army, Vietnam. Bill was a reconnaissance air scout in Vietnam with the 17th Air Cavalry, 1967 to 68. He was drafted in May of 66 at the age of 23. A little bit older guy, but went to Vietnam and flew over 300 air missions, if you can believe that. Has 14 air medals from Vietnam and received a Bronze Star for his service in Vietnam. Just a great guy. He lives here in Grand Junction where I live. And he was like 64, I think, when I interviewed him on December 22nd, 2007 here at my home. And I just saw him yesterday. He's 82 now, doing great, and it was great to visit with him again. I actually did an interview with him, not about Vietnam, but something else. But it was just great to see Bill. He's still around, doing great. But his time in Vietnam, his brother served in Vietnam. His father was in World War II. I have a picture of him after this introduction with him and his brother, I believe John Ogden, and his great-grandfather, Civil War. He's got the records from his great-grandfather's service in the Civil War, I think 1862 to 1864, or 1864 to 1867, somewhere in there. He served in, he fought in the Civil War, so that's pretty cool. But Bill's a great guy. You're going to really like him. Years ago, I was a contract painter, and he worked for Sherwin-Williams for many, many years, and that's where I met Bill. So found out he's a Vietnam vet and said, I got to interview you, Bill. Bill flew OH-6 helicopters in Vietnam. You'll see a picture of that also. Just a great story. I don't have a whole lot of stories. I have a lot of Huey helicopter pilot stories, but none of the OH-6s. But you're going to learn a lot from Bill. So I want to thank Justin Wilson for making it possible for you to see this story today. Justin, thank you. First time working with you. I appreciate you sponsoring the stories. This story, and just for your dedication to our veterans in this country, and I just greatly appreciate your support of my work. So God bless you, Justin. For those of you who have watched my radio station, Voices of History Radio, it's been on the air for 2 years now. Going to start our 3rd year, hopefully in March. And for those of you who have watched the station or just believe in the vision of this outreach to our youth, to our truck drivers, anybody commuting, really, it's to everybody. But those are some areas. People that are at home, I listen to it all the time, and I just learn so much from the stories. But all the stories that you watch here on YouTube are on Voice of History Radio 24 hours a day. Over 50 countries have tuned into the radio station over the last 2 years, and I just want to keep it going, folks. I'm currently trying to raise the funds to continue this mission. If you've been blessed by the radio station, or if you believe in the mission of what I'm doing with it, I would ask you to please donate to the radio station. There's a link on my website, larrycapetto.com. Go there, hit the donate link, first page that comes up, and I greatly appreciate any help you could afford towards the radio station. I want to keep it on the air. These are just operational costs. There's no commercials. It's a non-commercial station. You know me about not monetizing videos here on this YouTube channel. Well, in the same spirit, I don't run commercials or ads on the radio station. It's uninterrupted stories, one after another, and my documentaries are aired there too. So if you'd like to help with that, please donate to KVOH Radio. I really appreciate it. Okay, folks, I would like to ask you to honor Bill Ogden now with this story. I think I mentioned he received a Bronze Star in Vietnam too. Other medals too. I went to his home. He showed me all these medals. It's incredible. So, but he still had his flight jacket in this like shadow box. It was really cool. Just looks preserved well. So let's honor him right now. A great story, an unsung hero of Vietnam. And definitely worth our time and our attention. So share these stories, subscribe to this channel, and I'll talk to you in my next broadcast. God bless you.
1967, went over in October of 67, came home in April of 68.
Tell me, did you enlist or were you drafted?
I was drafted.
In 67?
In 66.
66. Were you in school at the time, or where were you at?
No, actually, I had been married and got a divorce, and right after the divorce was final, within about a month, I got my draft notice. So they nailed me real fast. I was 23, so I was older than a lot of the guys that were being drafted or joining.
So how did you feel about being drafted? Did you know it was coming, or, I mean, how did you feel?
Oh, I figured it was coming, and you know, I just kind of felt like that was something that we needed to do,
Yeah.
to try to stop communism in the world, and so I was not unhappy about it, but I wouldn't have joined.
Where'd you go to basic training?
Had basic at Fort Bliss, Texas.
And during that training, was it pretty much preparing you for Vietnam? I mean, is that what everybody knew they were going to be?
Yeah, they didn't really necessarily tell you that, but everybody pretty much knew that eventually, more than likely, you'd end up there.
Yeah, I mean, it's
at some point.
Pretty inevitable where you're going to go. I mean, at that time with things. So, how about just the mood of the country and your peers, even at that time? I mean, were you, hopefully supportive of what was going on? I mean, how'd you feel about all that?
Well, I thought everybody was pretty supportive of what was going on at that time, and you know, a lot of us didn't necessarily want to have to go to Vietnam. But if we went, we were ready to go and do our duty.
So in training, I mean, you guys gung-ho, ready to go? I mean, just you're in the Army, right?
Yes, I was in the Army.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so you went in 66, you said?
Went in May of 66 and got out of basic in July. Went to advanced training, AIT, at Fort Knox, Kentucky in August, and had armor AIT, so training on basically armored personnel carriers and doing armor type things. Then I ended up going to the 32nd Armor, which was a unit that they formed up to support the armor school for the officer candidates. And then I was there for a while, and then they formed up the 17th Air Cav, and so they transferred me over to 17th Air Cav to train. And when we went to the 17th Air Cav, we knew that we were going to Vietnam. I mean, they told us we were going to train for a year, and then we're going to go to Vietnam. But little did we know that they were going to speed up our training, and we trained for 6 months and went to Vietnam. So. Now you were trained. What was your MOS again? Well, actually, my MOS was armor. Okay. But once they sent me to the 17th Air Cav, then I was trained as an air scout. We learned how to fly the OH-6 helicopter because we were going to be flying in the co-pilot seat. And so they wanted us to know how to fly in case the pilot got shot or something, you know. And so we had to be able to fly it and be able to land and that kind of thing. So we got a lot of flight training and got a chance to do a lot of flying ourselves, which was really a blast. I really enjoyed that. That was interesting.
Tell me, Bill, about your deployment to Vietnam, the day, and then arriving in country for the first time, what you experienced.
Well, we went over in October. There were 2 battalions of us from the 17th Air Cav at Fort Knox that they sent us all, flew us out to Oakland, put us on the USS Walker troop transport, and sent us to Vietnam. It took us 3 weeks to get to Vietnam on aboard ship on the USS Walker. We landed at Quy Nhon, Vietnam, and most of my unit, now there were 2 squadrons of us. Our squadron, the 7th Squadron, the 17th Air Cav, stayed there. The other squadron stayed on board ship, and they took them someplace down close to Saigon. We actually got sent to Camp Inari, which was about 9 miles south of Pleiku, over in the Western Highlands. We were there for maybe 6-8 weeks, and they decided to send my company, Charlie Troop, to Chulai. And after we got to Chulai, at some point in time after we got there, they changed our designation to F Troop 8th Cav instead of Charlie Troop 7th Squadron 17th Air Cav, as we had started out.
So this was your complete title. You're with which Air Cav division then?
Well,
Under the 1st or what? I mean,
we were, to start with, I was with the 7th Squadron 17th Air Cav.
okay.
And then after they sent my company, basically, to Chulai, then they changed it to F Troop 8th Cav. And we supported the 1st Cav armored unit. We also supported 196th Infantry and some other units in our area of operation, which was north and west of Chulai, between Chulai and Da Nang. Chulai was about 50 miles south of Da Nang, and we operated in an area that was probably 30 miles north and south and about 75 miles east and west. So we had a large area that we covered. And our job as air scouts was to go out and find the enemy. And in doing so, we flew low and slow and hunted for anything that we could see. If we could see anybody trying to hide, or if we could see any rifles or any kind of weapons anywhere to give us an indication that the enemy was in the area. And what happened most of the time, that the way that we would discover the enemy was they would shoot at us. Then we knew where they were, and we flew in pairs with C model Huey gunship, and they would stay behind us a half a mile to a mile, and they would stay up and kind of circle at about 1,000 to 1,500 feet altitude. And then whenever we'd find something, then we would mark the target with smoke, and then they would come in and we would direct them to the target from where the smoke was.
Pop and smoke, is that what they call pop smoke?
Yep,
Okay.
sure was.
Different colors meant
Different color. Well, no, we just used different colors because it got to the point where the Viet Cong and the NVA would had smoke in all different colors just like we did, and they got to where sometimes they would pop smoke when we did, and so we'd have to tell them which color smoke was ours. And so
get confusing.
it could get confusing.
So okay, you're over in Vietnam. I mean, your first time in the combat situation, basically, right, over there.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me the first time you got into combat, what happened and what you experienced?
Well, I don't know, because things happen so fast that you don't even really have time to think about it until it's all over with. And then you can kind of sit and reflect on what happened and try to figure out what you might want to do and not do in that kind of situation in the future. And
was it a firefight? What kind of engagement did you have the first time?
you know, tell you the truth, I don't remember exactly what we ended up getting into. So many things happened during I flew 350 missions while I was there. And so in a period of 6 months that I was there, that was a lot of missions and a lot of different situations that we were in, so I don't really remember exactly what the very first one was.
Just take me on a mission where you did experience combat, something that you recall. Maybe you were shot at, or somebody else was shot down, or somebody was hit. Just give me a combat story.
Well, we were out searching a village one time. And like I said, we flew low and slow, so we might be treetop level, doing 30 to 40 knots, and just searching for anything that we could find that looked suspicious. And as we were doing that and hovering around this village, all of a sudden there was an explosion on my side of the chopper, which was the left-hand side. And the next thing I knew, I had a burning sensation down my shirt. And so I was trying to figure out what was going on, and so I started grabbing my shirt, and there was a piece of shrapnel in my shirt, and it was still hot. And so the only thing we could figure is that, because we never did see anybody, the only thing we could figure is somebody threw a hand grenade at us. And when it went off, the shrapnel from the hand grenade, some of it came inside the chopper and hit the bubble up above my head, and then went down my shirt. And as we were looking, trying to find somebody or some evidence of where the heck they could be, after probably 10 minutes of looking, I happened to glance down and I had blood on my pants leg. And I was trying to figure out where that came from, and found out that I had a cut on my hand over on the side of my hand, but it was just a little small cut and was just not bleeding very much, but just a little bit. And so as I flew, I had an M16 that I had laid across my lap. And so as I was holding it down, the only thing we could figure is that piece of that shrapnel that went down my shirt just grazed the edge of my hand as it came in before it dropped down my shirt. So we never did find anybody, and the only thing we could figure out with that situation was that they just threw a hand grenade at us and then disappeared into one of the hooches.
And you said over 300 missions, you're a scout. Is that like a reconnaissance scout?
Yes,
So
reconnaissance.
you're going in, but you're air mobile, you're going in a helicopter and you're looking, and so it's kind of like the guy on the ground that goes, the point man, in a sense, right? That you go
Yeah,
first,
kinda.
go in first.
Kinda.
Okay. Is that pretty dangerous work that you did there?
Oh yeah,
I mean,
oh yeah. Because
draw
of course,
a lot of fire?
oh yeah, we had numerous hits in our helicopter at different times. And
Tell me what that feels like at the time, and are you scared?
yeah, and probably the most scared that I was one day that we were supporting the 1st Cav, and they were out in a firefight with the North Vietnamese unit, and they were receiving mortar fire, and we were supporting them, and they asked us to fly over the area where the NVA unit was to see if we could locate the mortar position, and see if we could do anything about getting it knocked out so that they wouldn't keep getting hit with mortar fire. And as we were going, we flew over the top of them, of the armored unit, and went in to the area where the NVA were. And as we were going in, they fired a B-40 rocket at us. Well, a B-40 rocket is an anti-tank weapon, and it was probably the scariest time that I had over there when I saw this B-40 rocket go sailing by about 10 feet outside my door, and luckily it was 10 feet outside the door and not a direct hit, because if it had been a direct hit, there would have been nothing left of the chopper. It would have been gone.
Any of your friends wounded or killed during this tour that you knew, and other aircraft, or with you? I mean,
we were pretty lucky. Our unit only suffered 5 casualties during the time that I was there, where a lot of other units had a lot more casualties. 4 of those casualties were in one shot where a gunship got shot down. So the 2 pilots and the 2 door gunners all died in that crash when they got shot down. The other one was a replacement for one of the scouts, like I was, that had gotten wounded and had gotten sent back to Japan to the hospital to recover. And the new replacement came into our unit, and he had only been in country for 7 days and went out on his very first mission and just took a shot in the head and killed him. And those were the only 5 that we lost while I was there in the 6 months that I was there.
What was probably the hardest part of that tour, or the worst thing that you saw during that tour?
Well, probably the battle that we had with an NVA unit in what we called the Pineapple Forest. It was an area southwest of our fire base that was southwest of the little town of Tamkey, and it would have been northwest from Chulai. And we discovered an NVA unit of a little over 1,000 strong that were getting ready to, they were kind of laying low that day, getting ready to attack an outpost that night, because they generally made their attacks at night. And so they were kind of laying low that day, and they were going to attack this outpost that night. And we discovered them and had a day-long battle with them. And we called out the first Cav to come out and set up a perimeter around the area where they were located. And between them and us, by late afternoon, like 4:30 in the afternoon, the armored unit captured one of their officers. And through interrogation, the officer said that in radio contact with his people, that late in the afternoon, just before he was captured, that they estimated that they had lost over 700 out of 1,000, either killed or captured by our troops. So it was a pretty intense battle that day. And it continued on the next day a little bit, but it wasn't anything at all like it was the first day.
Did it ever get routine, or was it always a new adventure every time?
It seemed like it was always a new adventure. I mean, it was just something different every day. We early on, when we had been there just a short time, and we were just kind of trying to figure things out, we were out flying one day, and we went over a field, and it seemed to me like it was extremely odd that there were a lot of huge palm leaves laying around in this big open field. So after we flew over, I kind of leaned out the door and looked back, and when I looked back, to my amazement, these palm leaves got up and started running. And it was the enemy and they would tie those on their back, and then if they'd hear us coming, they'd just lay down, and they were covered up by this great big huge palm leaf. And then after we flew over, then they'd get up and go on their merry way. But since I happened to see what was going on back there, we did a quick 180 and went back and engaged them, and had our gunship that was our partner come in and engage them, and kind of took care of the situation. But it was just something different all the time, and that was one thing that was just very surprising to us, that because we'd never seen that before, and
Sure.
So that was different. They would lay down in the water and breathe through reeds, but most of the time the water was fairly clear, so you could see them laying there on the bottom. They may be in 3, 4, 5 feet of water, laying there with the reed sticking up out of the water, and you could just see them plain as day. But they thought they were hiding because they were underwater and didn't think that you could see them. But it was always something different.
Bill, tell me about the air medals. I read some of the citations. talk me through both of them, where you were, what happened, and then kind of, you know, give me the action that happened there.
Well, of course, the Air Medal was awarded to any of us that were flying after we completed 25 missions in Vietnam.
Okay.
And then the other citation that I got that you saw was an Air Medal with a V for Valor for the situation that I was talking about earlier in the pineapple forest, where we engaged them and had that battle all day long.
That longer one that I read downstairs, just tell me the story of where you were. You mentioned, I think you're supporting the first Cav there, and under fire you were doing things. So just tell it like it was.
Okay, we were, well, actually, when we were the ones that found him, it wasn't me. It was one of our. The way that we operated, we had 5 teams that would go out every day to the base that we operated out of, and we'd take turns going out and flying missions. And one of the other teams is the one that found this NVA unit out in the pineapple forest. And when they found him, then they called for help, and so some of the rest of us went out to help, and the first Cav was also stationed at the fire base that we operated out of, so they came out to set up a perimeter. So we were kind of supporting them, and they were helping us by setting up a perimeter to try to keep everything contained. And they were running all over the place trying to hide and trying to get away, and they would stop long enough to shoot at us once in a while, and of course we would engage them and try to eliminate as many of the enemy as we could. And so that's basically what happened that day. I engaged a few different ones at different times and wounded some, and it was always tough trying to do anything like that with the M16 that I carried, because we only had a 20-round clip. So about the time that you would get on your target, you'd run out of ammunition and have to switch clips, and then have to start all over again to get back on your target, because when you're moving and they're moving, it's difficult to get lined up on the target real fast. So,
did you say you received a Bronze Star?
I received a Bronze Star for another similar type situation that we got in at a later date.
Can you tell me about that? I want to hear about it and what you did.
Well, it was basically the same kind of situation. We had a large group of North Vietnamese that we engaged, and basically same thing. Again, we were shooting at them and trying to get everything under control, and I shot a number of those, and that's just.
Is it hard to remember those memories? I mean,
Well, yeah, sometimes it is. You know, those are things that weren't necessarily very pleasant, and so it's things that for a number of years you kind of try to put out of your mind and don't think about it. So trying to recall it real fast is difficult.
Now, how close were you? You're in a helicopter. You're shooting at the enemy at the ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of machine gun again?
Well, I had an M16.
Okay.
We also had...
Are you firing outside the aircraft?
Yeah, firing out through the door.
So you're getting pretty close to them.
Oh, yeah. You know, because like I said earlier, we were generally only, 40, 50 feet off the ground. And so we were able to move in pretty close to them and try to get a beat on them. As long as they didn't have an automatic weapon that they were trying to shoot us with, we were able to get in pretty close to those that were carrying small arms and and trying to get away from us.
Well, just describe that situation. Are you trained to do that? Is that an instinct, or I mean, how are you perceiving the situation as a threat, or just following orders?
Well, both, because it is a threat when they're shooting at you, and of course, our orders were to try to kill as many of them as we could, and so it was really both. And you know, once you get into that, you get so caught up in what's going on that you don't think about anything else, and you're just real intense on doing what has to be done at the time, and you don't really think about it until it's all over with, and you're headed back to base or whatever.
And then what happens? How do you process it? How do you rationalize it afterwards?
Well, I guess most of us, after we had some friends killed, because on that chopper that got shot down, that had the 4 crew members that got killed, 2 of them had become pretty good friends with me, and so, you know, you really feel like it's a loss. And so in a lot of cases, you're out for revenge, which shouldn't really be the case, but it just happens. And so you want to try to get as many of them in return for them getting your buddies, and so I guess that's kind of how you rationalize part of it. And of course, we were trained to do that, you know, so.
Every mission you think you fired that M16, or just some missions?
No, I would say out of the 350 missions that I flew, I probably didn't have to shoot it more than 15 or 20 missions. Other times, I didn't have to, because we were a 3-man crew. We had the pilot and myself that was actually listed as co-pilot observer, and then we had the door gunner. The door gunner sat behind the pilot on the right side. I flew in the front seat on the left side next to the pilot, and on my side of the chopper we had a minigun. A minigun is like a Gatling gun that's run by electric motor, has 6 barrels. It would fire 6,000 rounds a minute. And so oftentimes we would engage them with the minigun, or the door gunner had an M60 machine gun, and so we would engage them with the M60 machine gun. And I didn't necessarily have to get involved in doing that. All I had to do was kind of watch for what was going on and make sure that we weren't going to get sneaked up on somewhere and have something happen that we didn't want to happen.
How did Vietnam change you, Bill, from when you went in through that process and then afterwards even to today? How did that military training in the war change you as a person? Or did it?
Well, you know, I don't know that it necessarily changed me. I came home, and within a couple weeks I went back to work at the job that I had before I got drafted, and just pretty much basically went on with my life. And it seemed like at that time I was living in Denver, and it seemed like, especially in Colorado, Vietnam vets weren't treated badly. Later on, like 69, 70, and later on in the war, then they were. But when I came home in April of 68, we didn't seem to be treated badly. And there wasn't all of the anti-war sentiment that there was later on in the war. And as far as changing me, I don't think it really changed me. It was an experience that I think was maybe a good experience. You know, I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's not necessarily something that I would want to do all over again, but it was a very interesting experience. And over the years, I really haven't talked much about it to anybody. From time to time, I would mention a few things to my boys, and they didn't really seem like they were too interested, so it never went very far. But just recently, I was talking to my two boys that are coming over for Christmas this weekend, and the older one kind of indicated, and he's 37 now, he kind of indicated that he would be interested in learning a little bit more about it.
Good.
And what I did and that type of thing. So to me, that's good. You know, I don't mind sharing. I haven't really shared much with anybody all these years, and I think that's true of an awful lot of us, that most of us just haven't really talked about our experience very much.
There's a reason for that. When you saw my film, what were your thoughts hearing those other men talking?
Well, I was glad to see that there were people that were starting to talk about it, and that it is coming out more. Because I've seen things in the past on the news where possibly, like a situation I can think of right off was a World War II veteran that passed away, and his family started going through his belongings and found a box full of things that they had no idea that he even had. And in going through there, they were able to learn a lot about what he did in World War II, but he never did ever talk about it or tell anybody anything. And then it was too late, and they wished that they had maybe pushed the issue, and possibly he would have opened up and talked a little bit about it. So they felt like it was a real loss because they never learned about what happened and what he did.
How did you feel about talking to me when I first asked you? Were you hesitant, or did you decide? Why did you decide to do it?
Well, I wasn't really hesitant. I feel like it's time to do it. It's time to get it out and talk about it a little bit. And I think what you're doing with your films is really a good thing, and so that's why I said that I was interested in talking to you about it.
Good. Yeah, I'm glad you are too. Back at now, you weren't there a whole year. How come?
Because it was time for me to get out. My 2 years, because I got drafted. When you get drafted, you were in for 2 years, and my 2 years was up.
That was it. Okay.
So that's why I was only there that long.
And you obviously flew more than one mission a day.
Generally, we would fly 4 or 5 missions a day.
Yeah.
Sometimes 6.
Did you ever have to fly the helicopter yourself?
I never did have to, but while we were there, sometimes as we were going out to the area that we were going to search, or when we were on our way back to go back and refuel and wait for our next mission, we'd be flying along, and the pilot would say, "I'm hit, take it." So then it'd give me a chance to be able to fly it and keep up with it, you know, so that if something did happen, I certainly would feel comfortable doing it.
Tell me about any experiences, Bill, you had with the wounded, either medevacing or in the air, on the ground. Any opportunities that you had to be around the wounded?
We saw wounded. We saw some of our own guys that were wounded. We were supporting the 1st Cav one day when they were doing a sweep out through a rice paddy area, going to a village that intelligence had said had been taken over by the Viet Cong. And so they were going out through this rice paddy area, and there was a road that went between 2 rice paddies, and the dikes on either side were about 7 or 8 feet high, with rice paddies on either side, and this road going down through there. So they were in a column going down this road, and we were flying cover for them. So we'd fly over and then we'd circle around and we'd fly over them again, and just kind of watching for any enemy activity anywhere. And as we came in over the column, there was a tank that was going along, and all of a sudden there was this huge explosion underneath this tank, which they figured that the Viet Cong had gotten an unexploded 500-pound bomb and planted it in this road and set it off when they wanted to. And that happened to be when this tank was going over it. And it lifted that tank, and of course these tanks are huge, as you well know. It lifted that tank up, turned it 90 degrees, and set it down on top of the dike right next to it. The three-man crew, the two that were sitting on top of the tank, got thrown off. The driver, of course, that was down inside in the front, they had a collapsible seat. So if there was an explosion under the tank, that the seat would collapse. And he hurt his back, but otherwise he wasn't hurt. The two guys that got thrown off, neither one got hurt. So it was extremely lucky, but it was a huge explosion, and well, you know, to lift a tank that probably weighed 20 or 30 tons and set it 7 feet up on the dike next to it was a pretty good explosion.
To say the least, yeah. Wow. I'm going to go to something else and come back to Vietnam, but I've asked this question many times with veterans, but Bill, what does freedom mean to you?
Being able to basically do what we want to when we want to, be able to travel wherever we want to in our country, be able to say what we want to say in our country without having the government come down on us like most other countries have problems with. And I've always really cherished my freedom, and I've always been one that at any events when the flag was raised, I'm always right there. And it just really bothers me that these days you go to these sporting events and a lot of people just don't pay any attention, and they don't seem to care and don't seem to cherish their freedom like we do.
I see that a lot. What about the price for freedom? And what would you tell a young person today who was born in a free country, takes their freedoms for granted? What would you tell a young person about the price and the cost for freedom?
Well, the cost is high. There's been a lot of us that have gone and put our life on the line, and a lot of us that lost our lives protecting our country and keeping our freedom. So the cost is high, and they just don't appreciate it like they should. Hopefully someday they will.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. How about the American flag? What does it mean and represent to you as a veteran and as a citizen?
Well, it's to me it represents our country and our freedom. Both, you know, and as a citizen and as a person. It just.
But what do you think our country should remember about Vietnam?
Well, reflecting back on that now, I still think that at the time, especially that I was there, we were trying to protect our freedom and keep communism from spreading. I think that we could have done a whole lot better job. I think that the way the war was run by the administration of our country at that time was it was not done right. To me, if you're fighting a war, you go in and you attack the enemy, and you take an area and you keep it, and you move on and keep doing that and drive them out. But that's not what we did. We'd go in and we would drive them out of an area, then we'd go someplace else. Then a few weeks or months later, they were right back, and you'd have to go do it all over again. And we just didn't fight the war the way that we should have, and I think we would have had a lot different outcome had we done it militarily the way that it should have been done. But the administration wouldn't let the military do what should be done, so it ended up being a mess.
That's what I hear, boy.
That's the way I look at it.
Have you been back to the Vietnam Wall in Washington?
No, I haven't. When they had the traveling wall that they have that goes around the country, or at least used to, and it was here in Grand Junction, I did go to see it. And I was pretty moved by it.
So you knew people that were killed over there then?
Mm-hmm.
Whose names would be on the wall?
Correct.
Yeah. Was it just those 4 that you talked of, or were there maybe more, 2 or 5, or I mean, were there more that you knew of? There maybe friends from school or anything like that?
Well, you know, there weren't any friends from school or anything, but there were other guys that I served with in either basic training or AIT or one of the other units that I was in at different times before I went to Vietnam that ended up getting killed over there.
How about the Fruita Memorial out there? You been out there?
Yes, I have, and I think that's a great thing. I love that. I'm really glad that they did that.
What are your thoughts, maybe the first time even that you went there and walked around? What were your thoughts and your emotions at the time?
Well, I just kind of reflected back to when I was there and what was going on at that time, and knew that just kind of represented that to me, and was just really glad to see that we have that here in our own valley. I just think it's a wonderful thing, and I think a lot of people, because of where it's located, right there along I-70, I think a lot of people that are traveling through stop and visit that, and are pretty touched by what they see and what it represents.
Yeah, that's right. Are you proud that you're a Vietnam veteran?
Yes, I am.
Have people thanked you over the years?
Oh, yes.
How do you feel when they do that?
It makes me proud. Really makes me feel good. I have a 1966 Dodge Charger that I drive in a Veterans Day parade every year, and I have made signs that I put in the side windows so that as I drive down the street, it can be seen from both sides, that says 66 Charger Vietnam Vet, and I get a lot of reaction from that when I do the Veterans Day parade. You know, there's so many people that thank me for my service, and then there's quite a few people that love the car. So they're excited to see the car, but it's a good experience, and I just love doing it.
How about at work? I mean, is it known that you're a Vietnam veteran and a lot of respect for that? Or people ever talk with you about it?
They don't talk too much about it, although it's known that I'm a Vietnam vet, but there's not ever much said at work about it.
How come for so many years you and many others didn't talk? What was the reason for that?
You know, I don't know. I guess a lot of it was we were just didn't want to talk about it for who knows what reason. I think probably different reasons for different people. And in a lot of cases, most, or a lot of us anyway, weren't asked much about it. Like as if, nobody cared. And so, I don't know, I think there's just a lot of reasons that we haven't talked about it, but I think that it's, the older we get, the more we want to talk about it, I think. And I think that's a good thing.
What would you say to Vietnam veterans today that might be watching this?
Be proud of what you did. Be proud of our country, and just share your thoughts with family and friends, and be glad that you made it back.
Was there a lot of camaraderie within your group there in Vietnam?
I thought there was. We were real close.
Do you know of anybody in Iraq today, or is there anybody in your family, or you know of people over there?
No, I don't. But I support them.
Yeah.
I think it's a kind of a similar situation to Vietnam. I think we're in a situation that now that we probably shouldn't be in, but they're doing what they're told to do, and I just support them, and I really feel bad that there's so many of them losing their lives for it.
When you were on your tour over there as a scout, were you by yourself, or were there other helicopters with you at those times?
Well, like I said, we flew in pairs.
Okay.
So there was the OH-6 scout chopper that I was on, and then there was C model Huey gunship that we flew in pairs. And so we just flew as a team, and there were other teams.
Now,
I mean,
would the Huey fly that slow too, or not? I mean,
no. That's why they stayed up at altitude and kind of circled and stayed back. They made so much noise. We didn't make so much noise, but those great big huge blades on the Hueys, you could hear them coming for miles. I don't know, you're probably familiar with listening to St. Mary's helicopter coming in and out of here. Well, the Hueys made that much noise or more, and you could hear them coming for miles. And so if we were trying to sneak up on somebody, you can't be making all that noise without them knowing that you're coming. So that's why they stayed back, and we stayed down low and slow, and we didn't make so much noise, and so that's why we were able to find things.
was there an adrenaline rush when you'd go out on these missions, or was it? I mean, you know what I'm saying. Is it glamour in what you did?
Well, I don't know if there was any glamour, and there wasn't really an adrenaline rush unless we got into something. You know, when you start getting shot at, you get an adrenaline rush, you know, and then things start to happen, and then you really, really get it. But otherwise, no, it was just every day going to work, doing your job, you know, and then when something would happen, of course, then you'd get a shot of adrenaline, and things would get going, and you'd get real focused on what was going on. And
Well, when I read the citations, it sounds pretty exciting. It sounds like Superman. But you know, when you guys explain it, you don't make it sound as exciting. So maybe it's the way it's written versus what happened. I'm sure what happened was very exciting at the time.
oh yeah, it was. It was extremely exciting. But you know, it wasn't an everyday occasion. I mean, we may go a week or two that not much of anything would happen. Then all of a sudden, all hell would break loose. And so, and you know, it wasn't as bad before the Tet Offensive as it was afterwards. After the Tet Offensive, then things got a whole lot hotter.
So you're a scout. You're going out there. I mean, you got a couple of gunships circling in the area, and you're the gunner. I mean, there's a door gunner too that's shooting a 60 caliber. What is it?
An M60 machine gun.
Right outside the chopper, and you're doing an M16.
Mm-hmm. And we all carried, all three crew members carried pistols. The pilot and I carried .38s, which we had qualified with before we ever went over. I carried the M16 that I used from time to time. I also had an M79 grenade launcher that sat right next to me, and I used that on a few occasions. And then the door gunner had his pistol, which was a .45, and then he had the M60 machine gun that was hanging from the top of the door on kind of a bungee cord to where he could pretty much sweep a big wide area with it. and it wasn't on my crew, but it was on one of the crews in my unit. Were out one day, and they started receiving fire, and when we would get on board, we would take our pistol belt and turn it around and put the holster with the pistol in it between our legs, because once you get all strapped in with the seat belt and the shoulder harness and everything, if it was strapped on the side like normal, you wouldn't be able to get to it if you needed it. So that's why we did that. And so we'd all three turn our pistol belts and get on board and get strapped in, and this one crew this one day received fire, and the door gunner took a hit, and it hit him right in the 45 pistol, and then it glanced off into his leg. So he was pretty lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. You never had to land though and get out or anything like that? You were just
No.
there all the time? Never shot down?
Never shot down. Now, some of our choppers in my unit got shot down, but my crew never got shot down. Now, after I left Vietnam, I went back to Fort Knox to visit some friends that were at Fort Knox, and they had been riding back and forth to some of the guys in my unit in Vietnam. And from the time that I left there, the end of April, until August, when I went to Fort Knox to visit these guys, my crew had been shot down 3 times in those few months. So I felt like I was extremely lucky that I was there for 6 months and we never got shot down, and then within 3 or 4 months after I left there, they got shot down 3 times. But nobody got hurt in any one of those 3 times that they got shot down, which was extremely lucky.
Were you conscious of fighting for your country over there, or was it just doing the job and a matter of survival at times?
Well, I would say both. I would say both. You know, we knew what we were there for, but at times it got to be survival mode. It becomes a survival mode when you're getting shot at.
A lot different in Vietnam than World War II, and even Korea, the type of fighting.
Yeah, there were so many innovations that we had then compared to what they had in either one of those other 2 wars, that it was a lot different. I think probably one of the biggest thing was having helicopters, and doing so many different things with helicopters. We had helicopters that they would transport infantry units in. We had helicopters that were gunships that would go out and engage the enemy. And then, of course, us that were scouts. They had the medevac units that would go out and pick up the wounded and get them into a little medevac hospital as soon as possible. And that saved thousands of lives of guys that would have died in either one of those other 2 wars. Just because they weren't able to get the treatment as quick in World War II and Korea as they were in Vietnam with the medevacs. And then, of course, they had big lift helicopters that would move artillery pieces from one location to another and things like that. So it was just a lot different type of war than it was in World War II or Korea.
I don't remember if I asked you this. If I did, I apologize. But are there sights, sounds, and smells that bring back Vietnam today?
Sights, if I see something on TV, a show maybe about Vietnam or something, like I do sometimes on the History Channel or something, it brings back a lot of memories. Hearing a helicopter is probably the biggest thing. Hear a helicopter and just like that, it triggers it and starts the memories.
Were you ever diagnosed with post-traumatic stress?
No.
Okay. That's good.
No.
Yeah, good. You go out in society, Bill. I mean, you take pride in the fact that you live in this country and that you help, and what you did was part of keeping us free. I mean, do you ever think about thoughts like that, or? just kind of go on with your life, and Vietnam was back then, and maybe talk about it once in a while.
Yeah, probably that more than anything. But you know, if the subject ever comes up, any place in anything where I go or anything, I'm always proud of what I did. My dad was in World War II. I have the discharge. I have his discharge. I have my great-grandfather's discharge from the Civil War. And he was in the Wisconsin Volunteers and served 3 years from 1862 to 1865. So just knowing how that war was fought, I feel like he was extremely lucky to survive 3 years in all the battles that he participated in that war.
Amazing.
And it's just really neat to have his discharge from the Civil War.
That is fantastic. Yeah. Well, at the end of my interviews, I always ask the veteran to give me a salute into the camera from where you're seated. When I ask you, can you do that?
Sure.
Okay, just give me a second here. Okay, look right into the camera. Go ahead. Great. Thanks. Here you go.